Ahmedabad is the fifth most populated city in India, with just over 6.3 million people, putting them on par with Toronto and Madrid. In recent years, Ahmedabad has been undergoing major changes aimed at transforming and modernizing the city. In order to accomplish this, many old buildings and structures had to be torn down to make way for new ones. One of those structures was an old water tower in the Chandkida district. What should have been a pretty straightforward job quickly took a turn for the worst.
પેલા એમના ઘર ઉપર પડી મમ્મી પેલા મરાઠીને ઘર ઉપર પડી તોડ નાખ્યું પાછળથી બધું એ
Well, that didn't go according to plan. You can see a thin piece of rope or wire pulling on the tower. The structure gives way at the bottom, but ends up falling toward the house directly behind it. As the dust finally settles, we get a more clear shot of the damage to the ground level. Oddly enough, this was actually the third water tower to accidentally fall on somebody's house in just one singular month in India. In this instance, 11 people who were in the home were told to evacuate by the company in charge of the demolition. According to the family who lived there, they just showed up one morning and told them to be out by the afternoon. Hopefully, they were compensated for the catastrophic destruction caused. Baise is the westernmost city in Guangxi Province, China, right on the northeastern border of Vietnam. It's home to 4.3 million people who rely heavily on public transportation to get around. But after May of 2021, there were 5 fewer buses to go around. It was about 6 a.m. Locals in Baise were preparing to start the day when 5 electric city buses caught fire. The scary part is that nobody knows how the fire started. CCTV cameras roll as smoke bellows from the first bus. Then, kaboom! It bursts into flames, sending a massive cloud of smoke into the sky. Sparks ignite the nearby dumpsters, and the fire quickly spreads to the next bus. After a few moments, the third bus and 2 dumpsters full of trash go up in flames. The fire eventually spreads to the 4th bus before anyone arrives to put it out. Look at how gutted the first few buses are. Nobody knows what started the fire. Most believe it was something battery-related in the first bus. Something malfunctioned and it just exploded. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. I wonder who's gonna pay for all that damage. Ho Man Tin is a densely populated area in the Kowloon district of Hong Kong. As you can imagine, traffic gets backed up when you have 20,000 people living in 0.3 square miles. Hong Kong launched the Central Kowloon Route project to alleviate the pressure. It's a 3-lane, mostly underground highway running through the Kowloon Peninsula. The project began in 2017 and should be done by 2025. But on October 15th of 2020, they had a little accident. Workers hoist an excavator out of a giant ventilation shaft when it begins tipping forward. They know they can't save it and run as far away as possible. The machine finally comes loose and plummets into the abyss. Look at how the wires whip back and forth after all that tension lets loose. Work was suspended on the 42 billion Hong Kong dollar project while the highway department figured out what happened. Someone didn't rig it right, or the excavator was too heavy. Thankfully, nobody was standing down there when the machine fell. We can't say for sure how deep that shaft goes. Dos Hermanas is a Spanish city of about 131,000 people. Many locals work in the Alu Europa aluminum factories, a series of 8 massive buildings and warehouses outside of town. Aluminum and other metals are very dangerous when they catch on fire. That's because water and most fire extinguishers only make things worse. 2 workers learned that lesson the hard way when an aluminum fire started out of nowhere. Our workers go about their business when something goes wrong in the back. Funny enough, it doesn't seem like the fire has anything to do with the guy holding the blowtorch. It quickly spreads, and the workers don't know what to do. One runs back to grab something before hightailing it out of the factory. That's when the sprinkler systems open a portal to hell. Seconds after they left the room, the entire roof caved in, covering the factory floor with flaming tiles. It took the fire department hours to quell the blaze. Thankfully, it didn't spread to the other buildings, and our 2 workers were okay. Metal fires burn at over 5,000 degrees. That's hot enough to break water into its components, hydrogen and oxygen. On its own, hydrogen is a highly flammable and explosive gas. Meanwhile, oxygen breathes new life into the fire. In other words, pouring water on a metal fire is like pouring gasoline on a campfire. On April 20th of 2010, the Gulf of Mexico experienced the worst marine oil spill in history. Deepwater Horizon, also known as the BP oil spill, was one of the worst environmental disasters ever. An estimated 134 million gallons of oil spilled into the Gulf of Mexico, causing untold ecological damage. The incident began around 10 p.m. on April 20th, when an explosion on the Deepwater Horizon drilling rig claimed 11 lives. The Coast Guard notified NOAA around 2:30 a.m., but by then the damage was already ramping up. 2 days later, the Deepwater Horizon rig sank about 5,000 feet to the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. Oil spilled from the site for 87 days before they finally capped it on July 15th of 2010. By then, 3.19 million barrels of oil, or about 134 million gallons, had polluted the Gulf of Mexico. According to NOAA, oil rose from a wellhead on the seafloor through more than 5,000 vertical feet of water. It covered 1,300 miles of shoreline across 5 states in thick black sludge. Between land and sea, the oil slick covered 43,300 square miles, an area about the size of Virginia. In 2016, BP was found responsible for the Deepwater Horizon disaster. They were forced to pay over $20 billion in fines, most of which went toward restoring the Gulf Coast. In the end, no amount of money can ever repair the damage caused by all that oil. You remember the heartbreaking pictures of birds, fish, and other animals covered in black goop, don't you? In the Israeli city of Rishon LeZion, about 5 miles south of Tel Aviv, a demolition crew arrived to remove an old bridge. They drove 3 pieces of heavy equipment into the middle to start tearing the thing apart. Somebody must have miscalculated, because what happened next is not how you dismantle a bridge. The excavators weaken the center, which causes the section they're on to come loose. The entire thing crashes down, dragging the heavy machinery with it. It's like those cartoons where someone saws off the branch they're sitting on. Local authorities arrived and detained the site manager. They probably had a few questions for him along the lines of, how does this even happen? According to the Times of Israel, our 2 drivers suffered minor injuries during the crash. Apparently, accidents like this aren't uncommon due to poorly enforced safety codes. If you enjoyed this video and want to see another just like it, then be sure to click the link on screen now. As always, thanks for watching and be sure to tune in next time.